Welcome to the third hour of the Elias Macko Show. Now, a Quebec court has ruled that the province's English school board reform is unconstitutional, stating that Bill 40 unreasonably limits the protected rights of the Anglophone minority to manage its education system. I mean, the province really wanted to completely transform English language school boards. We saw what they did on the French side with those school service centers. Some had argued that it would violate the rights of the English-speaking community, and of course, a big win in courts on that front. Let's go to Russell Copeman now, Executive Director of the Quebec English School Boards Association. Russell, welcome back to the show.
Good morning, Elias. Thank you.
How big of a win is this on the board?
Very big, and the more attention with which one reads this judgment, it gets bigger. It's a sweeping validation of the English-speaking community's right to control and manage its education system. It's an eloquent defense of minority language rights in general, and also gives the government of Quebec pause on how it legislates on issues that affect the English-speaking community. There's a fairly lengthy discussion of how the government of Quebec must consult with, and not just consult with, but really listen to and take into account the needs of the English-speaking community when the National Assembly is legislating in areas that affect our community.
So let's dive into that. What did the Judge Sylvain Lucier, that's the judge responsible for this ruling, what did the judge say when it comes to how the government must consult? That word in particular, what does that mean when we talk about consultations? Right.
So, he was critical of the process around Bill 40, right? So I think one has to put it in context. When Bill 40 was adopted, there were very limited parliamentary consultations. This government in particular tends to do by invitation only parliamentary consultations. Secondly, this particular bill was adopted using closure, so it was not the normal parliamentary process. Thirdly, the judge says it's not enough just to consult, but the consultation has to be meaningful. There has to be some indication that after consulting with representatives of the community, the result of that consultation is reflected in legislation. And he says that wasn't the case. So, a lot of this, Elias, is based on a sort of a codification of what consultation means at the federal level with regard to Indigenous communities. The courts at the federal level have sort of laid out what it really means to consult First Nations and Inuit communities, and so some of it is inspired from that. But it is a very significant couple of pages in Justice Lucier's ruling, because for the first time it sort of says in Quebec, it's not just enough to hold a perfunctory parliamentary committee, say you've been talking to people, and then legislate. He specifically talks about taking into account the needs of the community, and clearly that was not done with Bill 40.
We're with Russell Copeman from the Quebec English School Boards Association. Bigger question, Russell, is this ruling, is the decision, is it appeal-proof?
No, of course it isn't. The government of Quebec can appeal. We have said to them privately and publicly, we hope they'll take some time to analyze this, and we hope that they'll meet with the QESBA and if potentially other community organizations to see if there's a way forward without going to an appeal.
So can I just ask it let me ask it a different way, right? Because I know they can appeal, but when I say, is the ruling appeal proof, was this ruling written in such a way and so devastating to how the government did handle things that they don't have a case on an appeal?
Right. I mean, I think that's the case, Elias. But it's been my experience that you get two lawyers in a room, and often you get three opinions, right?
Yeah.
So you can always argue anything. However, I do want to point out that when we applied for our injunction or our stay that was awarded in August of 2020, the government of Quebec appealed that decision from the Superior Court to the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal judgment on this on the injunction or on the stay was very, very clear, and in fact probably went further than Justice Lucier's initial ruling on the stay. Mm-hmm. All of this means, in our view, the Court of Appeal has already spoken on some of the issues relating to Bill 40 without a full appeal, and so we think that should give the government of Quebec pause, because the indication from this higher court, from the Court of Appeal, is that Justice Lucier and the Court of Appeal are on the same footing.
Who's going to make that decision for the Quebec government? Is it Simon-Jolin Barrette, the Justice Minister? Is it someone else? Who's going to make that decision?
I'm not entirely sure, Elias, but certainly the Attorney General and Minister of Justice plays a big role, absolutely. One presumes the Minister of Education will as well. Mm-hmm. But probably this is so significant that the Premier's office would be involved, and potentially even Cabinet. So, I want to emphasize that we are, to some extent, heartened by the fact that there's been no announcement from the government of Quebec that they're going to appeal. Mm-hmm. In fact, on the contrary, they say they're going to take some time to look at this. If you recall what happened with Bill 21, when parts of Bill 21 were struck down, in fact, the parts that apply to English school boards, that's the secularism law.
That's right.
Justice Minister Jolin Barrette was out the same day saying we're going to appeal this decision.
Yeah.
So that hasn't happened thus far. That's heartening. Mm-hmm. And may signal some openness to have some discussions with the community about the way forward that doesn't involve an appeal.
Well, that's the thing. Like the way I view it, this case, Bill 40, and what it does, and this ruling, it feels to me that the Quebec government knows they've got a loser on their hands, and they don't feel the same way about Bill 21. And I would agree with them. I think they've got a winner on their hands on Bill 21. I think they know they have a loser right now. And so I certainly hope they listen to the ruling. Let me ask you this. Your colleagues on the French side that are like the parents and the schools that now on the French side have these service centers, are they jealous? Are they envious of the Anglo position, the fact that we still have our school boards?
I think some of them are. I think, it's been a very interesting process, Elias, because very rarely do you have two different systems in parallel for as long as we've had them, right? Yeah. So the school service centers were created in February of 2000. They were blocked on the English sector because of our injunction, right? Yeah. So you've had 3 years of experience of these new school service centers versus school boards. And certainly our impression is, and I think this would be borne out by people in the French sector, is that those school service centers, boards of directors, which have replaced Council of Commissioners, have much less autonomy, much less authority, and much less independence than school commissioners. And, that makes sense because Minister Roberge, when he was Education Minister, on Bill 40 said, in fact, on the record, he says, these new school service centers, the people who sit on the boards, we're not going to ask them to govern. We're going to ask them to do accountability. We're going to ask them to do oversight, but they're not going to make big decisions. Yeah. So, and that's what we're seeing, right? When the Deputy Minister of Education gets a hold of a Director General of a school service center, they're pretty much saying, do this, and the Director General is saying, okay. That is not the case with English language school boards, because our Directors General report to a Council of Commissioners elected by the population and responsible to the population. And that's a very significant difference.
Russell, we're going to have to leave it there, but congrats on the big win this week and something definitely to keep track of. We'll talk again real soon.
Thank you, Elias.
That's Russell Copeman, Executive Director of the Quebec English School Boards Association.